So there's some out there who sort of insist that they should be accepted and listened to no matter what they say. They typically appeal to universality in that they say, hey, universality is supposed to accept everybody. But the whole goal is to destroy universality. The appeal to the sensible universal nature in order to destroy it. So here's the thing, when you're talking to somebody online, you can tell when they are the living embodiment of the ill Karl Popper warned us about with the paradox of tolerance. So a sensible person won't really engage with these types of people because they know that engaging lends perceived credibility to destructive goals. And so much about the way the conversation goes is about the perception of the other person's goals. So the Universalist, through basic justice, has the right to argue reactively in bad faith, to chastise and ostracize the aggressor reactively. The bad faith arguer is creating a situation by which the person on the defensive is simply enacting a just reaction. And the person that's reacting has the right to use bad faith in reaction, although they will be accused of using it as an affirmative. But the bad faith, everything is permitted mentality from the aggressor side expects the universalist to be accepting the argument based on universality, even though the universalist has the right to act in bad faith in reaction. It's never looked at as reactive to the aggressor. Typically, those that have limited views through identity particularity operate by rules that they set for themselves. Ends justify the means. So when the universalist reacts justly and uses the same rule book as the particularist, it's not seen as reactive justice, following the same rules that the particularist has set, but a failure to follow the rules that the universalist has set for themselves and then being accused of setting up a double standard. The universalist includes the particularist simply by accepting everybody that's human. The particularist excludes by subjective identity groups. So one is trying to include based on what is important, preserving life for all humanity. The other is trying to exclude in every way possible, including the extermination of people that are different than them. So one side will kill for nothing more than identity particularity, and the other side would never kill except in defense. These are not two sides of the same coin. One will kill everybody, and the other one is including everybody it can up to a point in which they have to defend themselves about the other side killing them. Typically, I would expect this argument to devolve into abortion. Yeah, but you kill babies and blah, blah, blah. But let's just not talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that here because there's no physical way to escape the complexity of the choice versus, state intervention, pro-life balance. One side is saying, if you want to live, become exactly like me in every way. And the other side is saying, you deserve to live just because you were born. Life itself is sacred. So it often doesn't matter if your argument is sound with the proper support. If you are a particularist, even if your argument is well supported, don't expect any acknowledgement, because to acknowledge it would be to move a bean from the jar of preservation of all life to some group who will decide who dies. So particularists feel excluded or ostracized even if they offer sound evidence, but it's because they have horrendous anti-human goals. When I say anti-human, I mean they choose identity, particularity, subgrouping over what is given before identity and choice, which is human evolution and the deterministic order that exists inside all of us. That's sacred. All life should be preserved as the first rule. Even if you present great evidence and great arguments, you'll get no credit with particularized goals because you missed the point. If you have it right and your argument is terrible, you'll still get credit for having it right for the points that you did get right. Either you're working to preserve life or you aren't. If you are, then the discussions about how to do that can vary. I see a lot of people complaining about those who support universality. They think their way is the only correct way and they won't deal with anybody else. And my answer is yes, they are correct. and they shouldn't compromise. Here's the thing, some people won't agree on the preservation of life in the first rule, and they assume they are already at the second rule and they deserve to be heard. But the reality is, if you can't agree to preserve life generally in the first rule, there is no going to the second rule to argue about how to do that. Everything stops at the first rule, and any sensible individual will have nothing to do with you moving forward except to get you to change your mind on the first rule. We all know from experience that it's next to impossible, and it takes strength from within those individuals who are missing the first rule to face reality that can't come from others. So there's no point in dealing with them any further if they can't agree to preserve life in general in the first rule. Yes, I do think that points of view that attempt to preserve all life first are truly sacred, as opposed to those who just accept some amount of death is going to happen. Every death is an unfathomable tragedy, and every death should be felt as if it could have potentially been your own loss. It's people who always think it's going to happen over there that sort of think like life's a game. They haven't seen any real tragedy. Or if they have, they've just become so sociopathic and are suffering from psychopathy, and they just can't make the connection, or they don't care about people. What other explanation is there? Or that they've been taught that people are garbage. Or, like some religions teach people that humanity is born, evil, and they have to be fixed, which isn't true at all, any more than an animal is born evil. Most identity groups that have wide-ranging reach have good people within them, and there's people outside of those identity groups that are also good. Just because they have the name of XYZ doesn't mean they actually are, the core of XYZ. And just because people outside of the group don't carry the name doesn't mean they don't act in practice, indirectly as the core of group XYZ. So all I'm saying is that a lot of times, the same way words, the same way categories don't totally capture life, it's the same with identity, particularity, and cultures. If you guys like this kind of philosophical subject matter, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.